Twitch. That would be handy.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, or good day, or whatever it is for you. Welcome into the Transpotting podcast. I'm your host, Samera.
And I'm your co-host, Eve.
And today we have the lovely Victoria joining us. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher your last name, but Victoria Bucholtz.
Close.
Joining us, also known as the very fabulous Karla Marx. Welcome
Hi,
in.
thanks for having me.
Wonderful
Thank
having
you for
here. This is
joining
exciting.
us.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, first off, how are you doing today? Welcome in.
Today's kind of been a chaos day. Like there's so many things going on right now. So it's just like a lot of organizing and prep and like big shows being produced and stuff. So a lot of emails.
That's the worst thing for a Monday is emails.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no.
Don't deceive me. Not on a Monday.
No.
How dare.
I'm chalking it. I was going to say, I'm chalking it all up to the freaking daylight savings time that has thrown everything for like a complete loop.
Are you like a fan of not doing the switch? Like staying on, because BC now just decided to stay on one time. They're switching now and then they're not switching again in the fall.
I'm a fan of the not switch. I don't want to switch anymore. I wish I could not do it anymore because as somebody who is extremely neurospicy, moving everything an hour off completely ruins me. I was 15 minutes late for work today because of it, because it's like I woke up when I should have been at work. It's like, yes.
Yeah, that's tough. Although they say that like staying on daylight time that we're on now is like not preferable because like I guess because of Alberta's population being some of the most northern on the planet for like large population centers, that would mean that like if we stayed on daylight savings time, that means that in the winter, Prairie wouldn't see the sun till 10:20. They were saying that does seem a little late.
I'm okay with that.
Then again, you live in Grand Prairie, so you made your bed. You sleep in it.
You made your bed. I mean, I'm originally from Yellowknife, so I mean, at the darkest day of the year, like. Yeah, we got 3 hours of sunlight, so it's like...
The planet does exist. It happens. Yeah. Not everyone's going to get the same experience.
Well, exactly. So it was one of those things, and I think the... with all of that being said, like... It's funny because the main populace wants to change the daylight savings time, but it's the biggest argument is, do you want daylight savings or do you want... standard time?
Yeah. I think it's funny because like so many people will say like Mountain Standard Time or Eastern Standard Time, and they say that even when it's daylight time, and I'm like, they're like, okay, we'll meet you at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and I'm like, I think you mean Standard Time, and then they don't know what it means, and you're just like,
oh my gosh,
yeah, like it means something. Those little letters after the numbers.
Yeah, that's one discussion we're not having in the States right now. We're discussing other things, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
You know what? Going there.
Sometimes it's nice to just talk about the time change. Like, do you remember when the news was boring? Like, you used to be like, oh, they're doing something really dull, like, and now you're like, well, who are they killing this week? Uh-oh, it's us
When
again.
I was a kid, my parents got like 2 or 3 different newspapers, and I couldn't stand reading them because it was nothing interesting. And now I live in the interesting times. I don't want to anymore.
Sure. I never asked for the interesting time. I'm a historian. I've seen interesting times. I'm like, it's not good.
Honestly, I can't remember. Like, I know about when it happened. Like, I think it was around COVID is when all the news, like, really, like, all of a sudden started just ramping right up. Maybe a little bit before that with Trump's first term, but even that was not nearly as what we're facing today.
I would say like, not to be all like death of history kind of thing, but like 9/11 was really when that Pax Americana decade of like, okay, the Cold War is over, everything's gonna be this, liberal future, everyone's gonna have a McDonald's and no one will attack each other kind of vibe. That really got shattered in one, and then suddenly the news was very interesting, I guess you could say, if interesting is not really the right word, but you know what I mean, that it's very intense, I guess is probably the best way to say it, as all those dramatic actions happened. And I think we're still living in the shadow of a lot of the imperialist actions that were taken after 9/11, which are also a result of imperialist actions from the Cold War, the post-Cold War era, post-World War, Second War. Like, we still never really had a global reckoning with like imperialist drives.
It's interesting you say that, because even now that I'm actually thinking about it, the main thing that almost comes up to mind is, the song "We Didn't Start the Fire," and it's just like that song of just like this, 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 and it's just like, oh, holy crap,
Yep,
that
keeps
song
going.
is real.
I didn't want to live the song though. I wanted to be someone else's problem.
That's completely fair.
I was happy not knowing.
Well, I mean, yeah, great intro topics.
Right? Was it?
I guess, Victoria, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've got a lot happening, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Anything anything particular you want to know, or like, I
Well,
mean, I used to be a child, now adult. I'm not. Where would you like me to start?
well,
At the
you
very beginning.
there you go. It all started in the womb. You mentioned that you're a historian, and I saw online that you have a doctorate in history from the University of Calgary with a cognate field in gender theory. Just to clarify for my own sake, cognate field, is that equivalent to a minor, or is that separate from a minor? I've never heard that term used before.
Cognate fields. So, with a PhD, you have 3 fields. You have a major field, minor field, and cognate. So your major and minor fields usually are pretty compatible. They kind of reaffirm each other. And then your cognate field is something that makes you interdisciplinary, well-rounded, something that kind of adds interdisciplinary context to your main fields. So that was gender studies, because at the time I was focused primarily on history. I was doing, I mean, still am a historian. So I do a lot of European history, German history, military history. And then my cognate field is gender theory.
What drew you to German history, military history, particularly?
Well, my family's German, so you kind of always have Uncle so and so, or these people that were in community that somebody would say, oh, they had like a hard war, and you kind of learned within the German community like what that meant. And so I always kind of grew up in the generation that, like, my grandparents' generation went through the war, and so they were still kind of like, it was a very present thing, and I was like, I gotta understand where this thing that had this huge impact on so many families that I know. So I was always curious about it, and then because my family's German, we would travel back from Canada to Germany semi-regularly and like visit family. So it kind of instilled a lot of love of history in me, because I went to Versailles, I went to the Tower of London, and so in grade 8, grade 9, early high school, when you start hearing and listening about like, oh, this happened at the Palace of Versailles, you're like, oh, I've been there. Oh, okay, cool. Like, that felt very real to me. And
I've
then
been there
gosh,
myself. It changes the context.
it totally does, when you're like, oh, I know what those rooms feel like to be, and it felt very real. And so that I was also very lucky that I had 2 amazing high school teachers in high school, history teachers in high school, because like our high school was pretty big, so we had 6 people who taught like social studies, and 4 were various football coaches. Oh, and one guy was a math teacher who was on the run from the authorities, that later he got found out that he like wasn't supposed to be teaching kids, because he was like on the run from the Ontario School Board, because he had been like dating a student, and they were like, what? So he ran for it. And in those days, like, Alberta just didn't, I guess they just didn't check to be like, why don't you teach in Ontario anymore? And he's like, no reason.
No reason.
And
Shuffle it around. Don't mind me.
yeah, and so grade 11, that guy got fired. But luckily I got
God.
one of the 2 guys who actually had like history degrees. And then I got to do IB, like International Baccalaureate History. So instead of just doing Canada for the 12th time in a row, we actually got like world history, which is really cool.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
One of the so Chad is asking a very interesting question. What are some of the historic gender theory topics have you learned that absolutely need to be shared with the world or are not getting enough attention. I'll put it right up on screens for you in case.
Historic gender theory topics. I think just how I'll share two, and one is how long the history of queer acceptance is, and how short the history of homophobia is. That
Yes.
if you really look at, and I'm including European history in this, if you look at how long queerness has been considered an accepted or tolerated, and even in many cultures, very celebrated component of society. We're talking thousands upon thousands of years back to like, hey, this guy we think invented the wheel and the written word and sucking dick. And you're like, wow, he did all three. Like, that's cool. Very, Renaissance man, 4,000 years before the Renaissance. Like, this is around, if you look back at like the Yellow Emperor in China, possibly lived like, I don't know, what was it, 2600 BCE, and they're like, this guy invented the wheel and the written word and all of these like foundational things of our culture, and also helped create the story of the cut sleeve and the shared peach and his lover like Long Yang, which was like dick code for a well-endowed and the guy had like sex with everybody, and they were like, wow, he was so progressive because he had one whole palace for all his female favorites and one whole palace for all his male favorites.
How
And
progressive.
but bisexuality was considered like a base of like people just like sticking it in the lowest hole in other people's bodies. And yeah, so that was kind of like and that's not rare. Like, that's ancient China, but like pre-Meiji Japan, like very celebrated. Even through like the samurai culture of like wakashu and nanshoku and like all these different types of queerness that were very, very celebrated. And if you look at it, and then if you also look at like non-binary gender presentations throughout the globe, one of the things that I teach is actually a class on global third genders, as it's called.
Okay.
And there's 10 different global third genders that I look at from every single continent out there. And a lot of these even survived Christianity and now are making very strong comebacks. So the gender binary is a very like 300-400-year-old concept. This like virulent homophobia is really like Christianity coming in like the 4th century type things. So we're like living in a very narrow view of repression, and there's nothing to say that we can't reclaim what's been lost.
Just takes
One of my
time.
favorite third genders is called the Balkan Sworn Virgins. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
Balkan sworn virgins.
Yeah, there's still about 150 to 200 left in the Balkans, primarily in former Yugoslavia. So a lot of like Croatia
Yep.
and Bosnia. There's some in Albania. And these are people who are assigned female at birth. And at a certain period of time in their life, they're like, no. And they undergo like religious ceremony. They swear a vow of chastity. And then from that point on, they are men. Socially, everything. Everyone treats them as men. And they are allowed to kill you if you mention their vow self.
That is so cool.
Isn't that wild?
That's amazing.
And like
See,
the
one of-
Hijra in India are making like a huge comeback, and a lot of their populations are
About to say that, yeah.
really blossoming right now. And there's like brother boys and sister girls in Australia. Like, I mean, I haven't done the penguins, but there's probably trans penguins out there too.
Absolutely.
Dang.
I think
penguins
one of
always
my
cotton
favorite
bombs.
historical facts about homosexuality and exploring that is that, like, for example, Alexander the Great, a lot of historians actually think that he was gay. He wasn't bi, he was actually like gay because of how Yeah.
I mean, I don't need to tell you about how often Macedonian rulers were known for having prolific sexual conquests. I mean, a tale as old as time. It's cliche to inform you again thusly, but Macedonian rulers were known for fucking, killing and fucking. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on this podcast, but I just did.
No, you are doing great.
Okay. And so Alexander was kind of considered like odd because everyone's like, dude's not fucking anyone. They're like, we'd be fine if it was boys, but it's no one. Like, he's doing nothing.
Oh.
So that was considered very odd until it was like, okay, you need an heir. Like, get get down to it, whatever the heterosexual form of scissoring is. And and so he did, and he like got a wife, and then definitely did not take her on campaign with him for the entire rest of his life. He had, when Xerxes was one of the Persian rulers was trying to make peace with him, and so gave Alexander, the Persian ruler's favorite male concubine, as like, check this kid out, hot, right? Peace. Here's a twink. You want this twink?
You want this twink?
And so he's
This
like,
femboy?
packing for this campaign that will probably last forever. Do I take the wife or do I take the twink? He took the twink. Yeah.
Gosh, I love this so much. This is so great. Rewriting
too.
history with twinks and femboys. Love it.
Well, it's like Hadrian, right? I mean, that guy was boy crazy. It almost started a civil war within the Roman Empire succession chain because of it. Because like Hadrian was never supposed to be an emperor. He was just like some guy, and then his parents both died when he was young. And according to Roman custom, he was then adopted to his like next most senior uncle, who was Trajan, who was like a military officer, and then because of palace intrigues becomes emperor, and then suddenly Hadrian's lined up to become the next emperor. So Trajan's like, okay, you better like learn some things. So he sends him to Greece, like the island of butt fucking. And so he learns all these things, and he also learns butt sex. And so he does, and then he comes back and he keeps annoying his uncle because they get into, tale as old as time, but like a classic twink fight. Because Hadrian wouldn't stop sleeping with Trajan's favorite twinks. And so at the time that Trajan dies, Hadrian's actually exiled back to Greece for too much butt sex, which was like a weird punishment to be like, you're sleeping with too many of my male favorites, so I'm going to send you to the whole peninsula where that's pretty tolerated. And so when Trajan dies, Hadrian is basically like, he's exiled, and his wife, it was a lavender marriage. She was such a lesbian. They built a wall down their house. So she would be on one side with all of her female favorites, and he'd be on the other side with his males. And then as soon as they would exit, they would like walk out the front door together, link arms, and then professionally, publicly, they were married. And she's the one who shows up at the Praetorian Guard and is like, yeah, everyone heard this, right? Trajan's last words were like, oh, my heir is going to be Hadrian. And he dies, right? We all heard this. And then she's like, cool, I did my job. I'm going to retire to the countryside, cut my own bangs, and have like a femme commune. I don't know about the bangs, but I assume. And that's how like Hadrian became emperor. And then he falls in love with this dude. He like goes on this like love affair. He like sleeps with this guy for like 20 years. And then eventually he's like, twink, twink, twonk. And everyone's kind of like, ooh, we were cool with it when he was like boyish, but now he's like a dude and this isn't so good. So the, classic story, they go to like rekindle their love affair on a cruise, and they go down the Nile. And as he's going down the Nile, somebody just tells Hadrian, they're like, oh, if you sacrifice someone who's young and loves you, you'll live forever. And he's like, sorry, dude. And he kills his lover, Antoninus, and he drowns him in the Nile. And then weirdly starts like a whole cult around him. So there was like a cult of twinks, the cult of Antoninus. Antoninus. Yeah. Anyways, it's a whole thing, and he starts like a cult after him, and then Hadrian lived forever or another 3 years, whichever came first.
Whichever came first.
I feel like this needs to be like its own book. Just all these fun stories, one after the other, just like, history shorts of.
Well, I have a show called History with a Drag Queen.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun.
I do drag and I talk about history. So I did one called Bad Gay, like Pride Villains. It was called Pride, the Villain Edit. And I talked about all these like naughty gays who get up to silly things. Because like every time it gets Pride, right, everybody's like, here's all the good gays. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the shitheads?
What about the shitheads?
2026. And being assholes now. We got it. We're moving into new roles. You're getting us out of sports? Fine, we'll be jerks.
Let's go.
We have plenty of bricks.
We could have just played volleyball, but you said no, so we're going to be jerks.
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
oh, man.
Oh, my gosh. I love that so much.
I was reading on one of the sites I was looking at. I think it was Woke Academy my.info. I had a little synopsis about you. One of the things I was talking about is that you were currently looking, or your research project was focused on conflict, violence, and the political manipulation of emotions.
Yeah, currently in 2016, that is when I was doing that.
It does say it was on the date. Like, I'm trying to find something. Just learning a
No,
little.
no, I know. No, I think that was on my bio for Mount Royal University, which I have not
Might have been.
updated in a decade.
But I'm
Oh
interested
my
in that,
gosh.
though. What was that project about? That actually does sound fascinating, especially the political manipulation of emotions. It seems kind of salient to current day.
It weirdly is, yeah. So my doctoral research looked at the rise of fascist groups through the military, called the Freikorps, and looking at a proliferation of these groups. And then it looked at it through a lens of a history of emotions, essentially arguing that these groups that were militarily weak used deliberately use bad tactics that they're like militarily, this is stupid to roll these like armored cars down these urban streets or sitting ducks. This is stupid, but it's scary. So we can scare people. Like we can take over the train station and we can take over the town square and put a bunch of machine guns in them, which isn't really going to do much if somebody actually came to fight us. But it looks scary to civilians. So they could use a weaponized fear and anxiety to control civilian populations and influence their idea of like, you're under occupation by the right wing, so you shouldn't support left-wing causes. And so they were using these kind of feelings to punch above their actual military value.
Interesting.
It's the exact same thing that like ICE is doing,
I
right?
was about to say, yeah, that's
Yep.
very much how the political narrative is now. Even I would imagine to some degrees in Alberta, from what I've been learning in recent months with the politics shift there and how right that is, but definitely here in the States with ICE and how
Mhm.
a lot of what goes on is just straight up fear mongering and manipulation. Because on one hand, you have a populace that is unfortunately largely uneducated on a lot of different issues, and and in the digital age now, a lot of people see a single meme and it looks like it has some kind of authority to it. It looks like it quoted something,
Mhm.
and they buy into it and they jump on it. And it feeds that constant mob mentality that we experience day to day.
Oh, wow, there's all these things in the chat. That's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a chat. Hi,
Oh,
chat.
sorry. There's a chat. This is
Oh,
Twitch
that's
chat. That's
cool.
right there.
Just hey, chat. Do you have anything like to ask? Do you want to know? I don't know.
Chat is on a little bit of delay from
Oh, I
what we
see.
see here in Riverside. So like what, 15-20 second delay in that neighborhood?
Something like that.
Yeah. So it does take a
Um,
second to propagate through.
yeah, and then also, like you were mentioning, you work with as a professor at Mount Royal University. You also work with Skipping Stone, which
I did until recently. I just moved on.
oh
I transitioned to a new role. I'm now the yeah, see what I did there? I'm now the executive director of Transactional Alberta.
oh cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Um, tell me a bit about that switch. That is so exciting. That's
Sure. So my job, I still teach a little bit. I teach part-time at Mount Royal. But my main focus now is fighting for queer and trans rights in Alberta and in Canada. So um there's a lot of national attention on what's happened in Alberta and the way that the government policies have impinged upon uh, trans rights. So that's something, the story that's a warning that I'm trying to bring to a lot of provinces. And so I also work with Momentum Canada, which is the national organization working to defend queer rights in Canada. Shout out to Faye Johnstown. And so she and I are going on tour. We're calling it the Trans Canada Road Tour. This is like a soft announcement. But we're going to be doing a whole host of dates. So if you're listening to this in the province of Alberta, get a hold of me somehow through Transaction Alberta or whatever. My Karla Marx Instagram. But I'm coming to any town that will have me. Like, let's go and talk about things. We're contesting spaces. I'm even doing one that people can come yell at me, where we're doing one where it's like, bring your drunk hold. It doesn't get it. We'll talk to them. But we're
come
going to
to
be doing a lot of
Banff.
shows. We're going to be doing a lot of events because I feel like unfortunately a lot of times people, when they interact, when our allies even interact with transness, it's kind of a negative thing. It's like, oh no, they're killing us. Oh no, we're losing rights. Oh no, like more sad trans events, because there's a lot to be upset and fearful about. But we always say like joy and community is important, but let's use those as actual mobilization tools. So I've created an event with Faye called Politics with the Drag Queen, and we're going to talk about what happened in Alberta. We're going to talk about right-wing talking points and how to counter them, and we're going to talk about where to go from this and bring in like local speakers and performers as we tour literally from coast to coast on this Trans Canada Road Tour. We're doing all 4 Atlantic provinces in May, June. We're going to be doing Toronto Pride, Vancouver Pride, Edmonton, Calgary. Like, we're going to be all over. So it's really, really going to be fun.
You should come to Banff.
Diva, I was there on Saturday. We had a rave going at Sheepdog Brewery. It was like the fire code is like 44 people. Like, I think we were around 100. It was bananas.
Wow.
Yeah. I was playing. Listen, when I played Waiting for Tonight by J-Lo, they weren't ready. Those hoes weren't ready for that.
No, they never are.
Bree Moon Fire in the chat had a question. What made me go into history in the first place? I actually didn't go into history in the first place. I went into immunology and infection. That's where I started my university career, because I was told that don't go into the arts, you'll never have a job. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I went into sciences and then found out that like I didn't really love it. And then because of various stupid reasons, it didn't work out. And then I was like, I'm going to enjoy my degree at least. So I switched into history, and then I really, really liked it. And I didn't know this, but like the historians in my university, the University of Alberta, they like scouted people to be like, oh, this person might be a good grad student. And so they scouted me, and they were like, you know, towards the end of my degree, they're like, your brain works the right way. Like, you should consider doing a master's. And I was like, I gotta make some money here. I don't think so. And they're like, we'll pay you to do it. And I was like, sign me up. Let's do this.
Wow. That's very cool.
I mean, when they said pay, not good. I like sold my car and lived off that, and like a few dollars they could scrape together. Yeah, you know, times where you could like live pretty cheaply there. Like you could live for like about $1 a day as a grad student if you're doing it right. If you learn where like the free buffets were, and like how to like scout out university talks that no one's going to but have catering, and you can just like leverage that. You're like, I'm a warm body and I will attend this if I get to absolutely pillage that buffet afterwards. So yeah, I did that, and then at the end of my master's, they're like, you should do a PhD, and I was like, I gotta make some money, and they're like, people will pay you for this, so I ended up in Calgary.
So as you were like going through all these studies and trying to figure this out, was this like, I guess the bigger question is like, was this during, before, after transitioning, or during learning about drag queen, or like whereabouts in this was all of this trying to figure out university at the same time?
I was a little bit of a late blooming queer, so I didn't transition until after I was done my PhD.
Oh, wow.
I'm old. I'm from the 1900s, children.
Welcome, you're in good company.
Yeah, I started like 4 days. I started my undergrad 4 days before 9/11.
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
wow, we're starting university and our whole lives are ahead of us. Isn't this great? What's that? Why are they turning the TVs on? That can't be good. Yeah, so that's when I started. And then I was done my PhD in 2015. And then I actually just started transitioning I started that year.
Oh, wow.
So I started in 2015.
And so were you, because you were looking at going into finishing up your history and starting teaching and everything.
Yeah.
How was that? How was the university with the... Sorry?
Terrible.
Oh, no.
Trying to be being baby trans in front of like 100 undergraduates. Yeah, just lovely. The rate my professor was very kind. No, it's terrible.
Jeez.
And the universities that like roll out these pride banners were also insisting on like dead naming and misgendering me until I got so lucky. Like I even had my updated IDs and everything, and they were like, too late. We're still gonna like dead name you for this whole next semester. And I was like, could we not? And they're like, our policy, sorry. And the only reason I didn't get dead named like the first semester that I like officially like full-time transition. I'm not doing the boy moding thing. The only reason I didn't get designated was because one of my friends who was an admin assistant and was like 3 months from retiring, which is like, screw this. So she just changed my name in the system, and she's like, they reprimanded me. What are they gonna do? Fire me? I'm retiring in like weeks. And that's what saved me. And then like, I've had campuses that I work at that there's been proposed bathroom bans in Alberta from our ruling party. And I emailed them and said, like, so what would happen if this happens? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, government policy, we'd have to follow it. But happy Pride.
And this is Mount Royal. Holy crap.
I didn't say any names. Am I temporarily deaf?
Right.
I mean, in the university, should not do exam.
I mean, they're all in a tough spot, right?
Yeah.
I get it. It's just the idea of hiding behind legality, the idea of hiding behind like, oh, well, this is what I'm just an administrator and I have to comply with these rules, even though I think that they're horrible and terrible. It's like, well, but like, do you? Like, what are they going to do? What if all of you stand up and don't?
Yeah.
They can't fire
Crazy
all
concept.
of you. If we actually have, that's why like our biggest tool against fascism is solidarity. Bree Moon tell us.
Yeah, Bree's going crazy on the questions. I love it. We'll go up a little bit because I think this was a little bit into it. Do you use drag at all in your profession as a historian or professor? How does that intersect or doesn't it?
It used to not. Like definitely when I was still a baby queen and I was still quite new. I was like, oh, okay, I have to keep these separate. And now there's really not a lot of separation. It's kind of all smushed in. I use a lot of humor in my classes because I'm a comedian, and it's all smushed together. Not only do I run a show called History with the Drag Queen, where I talk about history in drag in like nightclubs, I also run a class called The Art of Drag, in which we do drag, and because I feel that the best way to study drag is to do it. So we do a couple of weeks of like study and theory and inspiration, and the 50% of the course is a massive project of building a drag character, bringing it to life, which means the students do drag, and then analyzing like how it went and the choices that they made and what does this say about their understanding of drag. So they actually, we've run it twice now at MRU. And there's a course called The Art of Drag, and they literally get university credit for learning about this art form.
That's amazing.
And the role it
I
plays
love
in
that.
gorillas. Yeah, so that's really fun.
That's amazing. Part of my awakening from my own trans journey was going through, because I went like the cross-dressing drag pipeline to being
Sure.
trans. That was part of my early exploration. So
Playtime. I'll wear a wig if you want.
but that was part of mine, and that's just fascinating to hear that that's actually something someone's teaching and bring out as an experience. That's really very cool. I love that.
Well, I think you said you're also from the 1900s, and I was, a young trans woman in the, 80s and 90s in Alberta, where there was no queerness. And anywhere that I was able to access anything about a body that kind of like I didn't even really understand, you saw slurs, right? Like there was the T, you'd see online about like T slurs or S slurs, and you're like, okay. Like it's a joke, but it's true that the only representation of transness I saw was Mrs. Doubtfire in pornography. Those don't seem like clear paths for me at the time. And I was like, you want to make porn? Great. Make
that,
it,
or you're
but
the villain. The villain was the third option.
yeah. Yeah,
there was always a trans villain somewhere in there.
Well, actually, when I look back on it and I think about like when did I see the first trans person on like a TV show or something like that, it wasn't until Orange Is the New Black that I saw a live trans person, because they were always corpses on CSI.
Yeah.
Like CSI Miami, I didn't think there's any trans girls left.
Yep.
And handled in just the most brutal ways. So it was hard to even imagine that. And so like you're not straight in some way, and you're trying to access any kind of resources. And if you have a body that's assigned male at that time, it was very like, okay, am I part of that community? And those guys are like, well, if you have a penis and you really like femininity, you're probably a crossdresser. And you're like, I guess so. Until you kind of realize that like, oh no, it doesn't have to just be related to just sex. Oh, I like this outside of sex. Oh, I'm a lesbian. I like vomited after.
Yeah.
There were signs that I wasn't in the right end of the pool.
I think I remember my first exposing of a trans person, like my first exposure of it, I guess is the best way to, was actually ER, and I remember watching
Oh
it
shit, yeah.
because of course, back in that day I was the good little Christian, watching it with my parents on a Sunday night after church, and we would watch it, and we saw this, and oh
And you're
my
like,
gosh,
yeah.
yeah.
It's so tough when you have those experiences and you're just like, my family, like, they were so polite. They were so middle class, calm, that kind of beige. And they would never say something overt, but there'd be like a sigh or a groan. Queerness would come on the TV and it was like, and they changed the channel, right? Or like my dad would roll his eyes or something. And it was just like the way that he like grew up. And like now he's cool with it ish. He's come to like drag shows and burlesque shows. And no, not like that. He's come
Oh,
and they're just like,
That happened.
introduction. And you're like, okay. Like they're still just the straightest people in the world. They're supportive, they're great. They didn't like necessarily, they couldn't like listen to me who has like a PhD in this and teaches this and like lives this. They only got it once I gave them a book. And they were like, well, have you read this? Did you know that this is all about transis? I'm like, yeah, I gave you the book. I teach this site. But like, like they're educated people and they needed the written word to get it. And then they've been really good, like they've come around. They're great.
Try that with
That
my
I-
parents.
that actually reminds me of we had a trans author here on this podcast a little bit ago. Her name is escaping me right now, but she wrote a book called about like things that stories from your trans auntie, or things that you would ask your trans auntie or something like that.
Yeah.
I am butchering it right now because my brain is like fried from the day, so I do apologize. I will look it up. I will correct myself during the break.
Advice from your
It's
trans
been a
aunt,
long week.
Erica Ball.
Okay?
It's been such a long week.
It's Monday, but it's been a long week.
But I remember the reason I think of this is because, of course, I saw that book and I told my parents about it and I bought it for them and I gave it to them, and it's just like, it's this whole thing that they now have it on their desk or on their coffee table and
That's
stuff like
cute.
that. And it's just like, I to this day, I still don't think they've actually read it, because I'll ask them about it and they're like, yeah, we have it, but have
And you know
read
what?
it?
They might be queer supportive, but maybe they're just illiterate.
It's also possible. Who knows?
You might be like, I don't think they're reading it because of queer. Maybe they just don't like words.
Words are scary.
Okay, we gotta get to these chat questions because
Oh my gosh.
I don't want Bree
love
to
it.
like explode if I don't answer these questions. I want to answer them. What do we got here? What is drag-lesque? Oh, it's drag and burlesque done together, and it's quite hard because you have to be like really good at. You have to be able to like do burlesque properly, and then you also have to be able to do drag properly, and then smush them together. And so oftentimes you see people who are like, I do drag-lesque, and it's not great because it's like you're doing drag and you just took a coat off, which is not burlesque, or you're doing burlesque and you just like mutter the 3 lines of the song that you like, but it's not a good lip sync and you drop it really quickly. So yeah, drag-lesque is like you're doing proper peels, you're doing reveals, you're doing like the art of the tease and the sensuality. You're doing like burlesque, but then you're also serving like a proper drag lip sync and the pageantry and the styling and stuff like that. So I do a lot of drag-lesque. Technically I'm still like a drag queen, but I kind of really more refer to myself just as like a trans showgirl now, because I do so many things. Like I do drag, burlesque, stand-up, hosting, and then I had to pick a trans cliche, and I'm not going to do IT, so I become a DJ.
How did you get into drag? What was your how did that begin, that adventure for you?
Oh, that was my wife. I was going out somewhere, and she was watching Drag Race, and it was just as I was transitioning, and she was watching Drag Race, and I was making jokes about it. And she said to me, she's like, you're so sassy. Why don't you become a drag queen already? And I was like, fine, I will.
Challenge accepted.
She's an amazing burlesque artist. Her burlesque name is Bitch Sassity. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
That's
And
great.
so she was already in performance world, and I'd been like hosting some burlesque shows at the time. And so I was kind of around the performance community, so it wasn't super alien to me. So I decided to like learn how to do it. And I was so ugly. I was so busted for like the first like 6 months. I was like rotted. I was always the girl that they were like, "This is Karla." Yeah, I know, but she's funny. Don't worry.
She makes up for it. Just if you were giving qualities.
And then eventually they kind of realized that I wasn't going away and that I was gonna just keep doing it and that I was like pretty funny. So I was getting a lot of reaction and like some popularity. And then my second drag mom, Mother Teresa, she was like, "Do you want me to teach you how to paint?" I'm like, "Someone's got you." And then I got pretty in drag, and then it's been kind of one great thing after another. And I've had so many people who supported me with drag. Like obviously Jamie Simons, who was my first drag mom from the like legendary queen from the '90s here in Calgary, and then my wife, Bitch Sassity, my drag mom, Mother Teresa. But like guys like Blake took Blake, who runs Detours here in Calgary, like a huge party. Him and Dan Clapson took a chance on me. I'd hosted like a couple of after parties of Drag Race, and they took a huge chance on me when they brought in Trixie Mattel, and they said host it, and there's like 1,000 people showing up, and I went from like hosting Drag Race after like viewing parties of 50 people to you're at the Palace, here's 1,000 people, and Trixie Mattel
Wow.
is going to be going on after you, so don't fuck it up. And you're like, okay.
That's amazing. That is
And
very cool.
I did it, and I rose to the occasion and made people laugh. Some people were in the audience and saw that and then booked me for other things, and that's when my career really started growing.
Where did you
Very
come
cool.
up with the name Karla Marx?
Oh, well, I wanted something that I wasn't gonna get sick of, because I was like, like you get like there was a lot of people who are like, they do a name, they change it, and I was like, okay, like I want something that what's something that's me that I'm gonna still feel attached to, because I'd had some tattoos that I got covered up because I thought they were great, and then after 5 years, I was like, I don't vibe with this anymore. So I didn't want to do that. And I was like, well, what are things that I've always felt? And like, I've been a communist since '93. So I was like, well, I've always liked this. And Karla Marx made sense.
It works.
And, raising class consciousness and understanding the way that capitalism continues to divide us and pit us against each other. And I'm a profound humanist, and I believe that every human life has the same value and dignity, and it's only accident of birth that leads us to one outcome versus the other, which means that wherever you're born under capitalism, the global capitalist system determines so much about your life. And I don't think that that's fair. I don't think that's real. I think that, if you're born into a rich family or poor family, why should that change the value and dignity and experiences of your life? And, I think that this is our society is so ingenious. We have enough wealth that we can share. We should all have a first plate before people get seconds,
Absolutely. Makes no sense to have billions of dollars. Billionaires shouldn't exist in that context. Ever.
100%. Any billionaire is a failure of policy.
Yep.
Great. Get to $999 million and tax that guy out of like oblivion. You get a park bench. Good for you.
You used to get in a hospital.
Yeah,
Not so much
sure, build a
anymore.
hospital. Where's the Elon Musk libraries? Where's the, Jeff Bezos
Right?
performance hall? Where's the
Yeah.
like after school programs? Like they had billionaires before that were like, hey, if we don't do some nice things for the plebs, they're gonna kill us.
Well, yeah, you go back to the day the oil tycoons and whatnot. That was what I understood it to be. That was like the hallmark to show their successes. They definitely share the wealth directly, but they built things. They built hospitals and they built train stations.
Yeah,
Like
but they had to be convinced and
True.
afraid to do it.
True.
When guys, when reformers like Roosevelt came in, they were terrified because they were like, oh shit, like they're going to tax us into oblivion. They're going to use these antitrust laws to break things up. And when antitrust laws used to mean you can't get so large as a company, that was a real fear. And so they were like, we need some PR. Like, yeah, they did it because it was considered like noble and dignified, and because they were just bored and had so much money. But they also had like a fear of the working class pushing back. And that's because socialism was such a hot concept in the 1880s and 1890s, that there was real fear of like, okay, like these revolutions could really wipe us out. So we have to like invent a kinder, gentler capitalism so that the plebs, the wealth inequality doesn't get to French revolutions like, income disparity, which we have long since blown past in our current society. Because now we look at it and say, like, antitrust laws are incorporated into are processed through the lens of, does it equal lower prices for the consumer in the short term? So if it benefits consumers, then it can't be bad, rather than, is this going to lead to a monopoly? And so that big shift in the 80s really changed how our society operates. And then obviously, like, Citizens United and letting uncontrolled, corporations are people and they have free rights and they need to be able to pump money in, has led, massively to the system of oligarchy that we have right now, where it's not a real citizens democracy. It's an economic democracy where one vote doesn't equal one person, one citizen. It's, well, one citizen has $5,000 and one citizen has 5 billion. So who are you going to listen to?
Yeah.
The dollars are now your economic power or your democratic power.
I think there was also a little bit to, of a lot of like older philanthropists had a lot to, they wanted to build a legacy. They wanted to be remembered. They wanted to, put their name on a building or a statue or on something just so that they would be remembered, which I feel a little bit of it that is also attributed to the internet now because, well, Elon Musk will be forever known because of the internet. And it's like that whole change of just how the media is shared.
Yeah, people forget.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that whole change of the technological era. I mean, yeah, there's still assholes for having way too much money, but, eat the rich. I think this might be a good point to quickly do a small intermission before we dive back in too deeply. This has been absolutely great. So we'll do a quick 10-15 minute intermission here and allow everybody to go use the bathroom, grab some water, grab some snacks, do what you need to. Take care of yourself.
Throw a question in the chat. I love seeing your questions. They're great.
Yes, ask Victoria all the questions.
Please do.
We appreciate the help. All right, so we'll just do the quick outro and then we will be on break. Please work.